welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so today we're diving into the sources you sent over. Really looking closely at Mark Attanasio, owner of the Milwaukee Brewers. It's a fascinating case study.
Yeah, it really is. Because there's this paradox, right? He's successful, no doubt, worth about $700 million, the estimates say. But, in the grand scheme of sports owners, $700 million, it's a lot of money, obviously, but it's not that top-tier buy-anything billionaire status we often see.
Exactly. He's not one of the titans, the kind of figure you'd expect to be bending governments to their will, purely based on, well, sheer wealth.
And yet he just managed to secure this massive public funding deal, $546 million from Wisconsin taxpayers for stadium renovations. Right. And that's the core question for this deep dive, isn't it? That gap. How does an owner, firmly in a mid-market team, not really a huge national headline grabber, pull off that kind of legislative win? We're not just looking at one good negotiation here. We need to unpack the strategy. It's about positioning, getting onto the right policy committees, controlling the narrative. It's how he manages to influence the actual financial rules, both locally and within Major League Baseball itself. It proves, really, that you don't have to be the richest person in the room to steer the ship.
Okay, let's start with that local deal then, because the numbers, the breakdown of that $546 million renovation package, that really throws the leverage into sharp relief, doesn't it? The sources lay it out pretty starkly. Wisconsin, the state, puts in $411 million. Then you've got local government, Milwaukee County and the city, adding another $135 million.
So that's a $546 million, yeah. All public funds.
Right. And then the Brewers organization, Attanasio's group, they contribute $100 million.
Just $100 million. So, do the math. Over 80% of the cost for updating a facility used by a private business, paid for by taxpayers.
You'd expect huge public backlash,
Right.
especially in a smaller market.
You absolutely would, but it didn't stop things. It passed.
Okay, but I need to push back a bit here. Is this really quiet power? Securing $500 million by, let's be honest, hinting the team might leave if they don't get the money, that feels like the oldest trick in the book. Loud, not quiet.
That's a fair point. The threat itself isn't subtle, no. The subtlety is in the preparation, the groundwork laid over years that made that threat so incredibly effective in Milwaukee. Attanasio and his team didn't just position the Brewers as, entertainment. They framed it as essential infrastructure, economic infrastructure, emotional infrastructure.
Okay. So in a smaller market like Milwaukee, losing the team feels like a much bigger blow than it might in, say, New York or LA.
Exponentially bigger. They tapped into that civic identity, the tourism impact, the local jobs. They made the potential loss feel catastrophic. So the leverage worked because the perceived cost of saying no, losing the Brewers, felt way higher to politicians and the public than the actual financial cost of the $546 million.
They weren't just asking for money. They were selling insurance against, losing the city's soul, as some put it.
Precisely. And that fear, that carefully cultivated fear of loss, created the political cover needed.
Which explains the vote count.
Exactly. A 69-27 vote in the Wisconsin State Assembly. Very decisive. Lawmakers felt they couldn't risk being blamed for the team leaving.
Okay, so the takeaway from the local win is pretty clear. Influence isn't just your bank balance. It's about making others feel they absolutely cannot afford for you to walk away. He manufactured indispensability.
Well put, yes.
All right, let's shift gears from Wisconsin politics to inside Major League Baseball. He doesn't own the Yankees or the Dodgers. He's not running the biggest payroll. So how does he get influence within the league itself where the big policy decisions happen?
He does it by securing strategic positions, getting seats at the tables where the real rules are made.
Not just advisory rules.
Oh, no, these are committees with actual power. The sources point to his role on MLB's Investment Committee and, crucially, the Revenue Sharing Committee. He was also on the Labor Policy Committee before.
Okay, revenue sharing and labor policy. Those sound like the places where the economic structure of the sport gets hammered out.
Absolutely. If you want to fundamentally change how the economics of baseball work, especially for smaller markets, you don't just throw money at free agents. You get on the committees that write the financial rules.
And we see him actively pushing for changes that would benefit teams like the Brewers, right? Like his comments on media rights.
Yes, exactly. In 2025, he publicly brought up this idea, suggesting MLB should look at a national media rights model, more like the NFL.
Which would be a huge shift. The current MLB system really benefits big market teams with their massive local TV deals.
Right. A national model where broadcast revenues are pooled and shared more evenly, would provide a massive stability boost for small market teams. It helps level the playing field financially without needing to match, say, the Dodgers payroll dollar for dollar.
He actually said something like, you see what the NFL has done? If we can do something like that, that's a powerful tool.
Yeah, that quote shows his thinking clearly. He's not just reacting to the system, he's actively trying to reshape the system itself to favor the model of team ownership he represents. Structural change.
It's a very leveraged approach.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned ruling power, not just advocacy. The Washington Nationals broadcast revenue dispute. Tell us about that. How did he exert direct influence there?
Okay, yeah. This is a prime example of how sitting on the right panel translates into real policy impact. There was this complicated dispute involving the Nationals and the regional sports network, MASN, over how much their broadcast rights were actually worth for revenue sharing purposes.
Right. These disputes happen.
They do. But Attanasio was on the arbitration panel that ultimately voted on this. And the panel voted to cut the Nationals' claimed broadcast revenue share significantly by 20%.
Okay, wait. Cutting one team's share by 20%. How does that ripple out? How does that change things for everyone else?
It sets a huge precedent. It basically affirmed the league's central office has strong authority to interpret and, to some extent, dictate the valuation of these local media deals when it comes to calculating revenue-sharing contributions. It sends a message. Teams can't just inflate their local media rights value artificially to minimize what they pay into the revenue-sharing pool or maximize what they get out. It strengthens the Central League's hand in managing the whole system.
Which ultimately benefits the smaller market teams who rely on that revenue sharing.
Exactly. It helps maintain the integrity of the mechanism that supports teams like Milwaukee.
So by sitting on that panel, he wasn't just resolving one dispute. He was reinforcing the rules in a way that benefits his long-term strategic interests.
Yes, that's
That's deep influence.
It's shaping the architecture. Far more impactful than just, signing a big contract.
Okay, let's circle back to Milwaukee and the public perception. How did he manage the narrative around that $546 million stadium deal so well? He had overcome that natural skepticism, the feeling of billionaire asking for taxpayer money.
He played the long game with perception. It was about creating this illusion of reinvestment, making it feel like a partnership long before the big ask.
How so?
He didn't wait for the funding to be approved to start showing improvements. They deliberately rolled out very visible, fan-focused upgrades before the vote.
Like the food courts, the local vendor things.
Precisely. Things like the 3rd Street Market Hall-style food areas, highlighting local businesses within the stadium. These aren't huge costs compared to $546 million, but they're highly visible.
So they create a feeling that the team is investing in the fans, in the community already.
Exactly. It subtly reframes the big funding request. It stops feeling like a corporate handout and starts feeling more like, hey, we're partners in this, we're already improving things, now we need help with the big structural stuff to keep this great community asset going.
And the media messaging, as the sources point out, hammered home jobs, local contracts, tourism, and that emotional angle. Milwaukee, without the Brewers, loses its soul.
That's key. They tied the private interest, the need for stadium funding, directly to the public identity and economic well-being. It made it incredibly difficult for lawmakers to vote no. Voting no wasn't just fiscally prudent. It was framed as being anti-Milwaukee, anti-jobs, anti-community spirit, politically toxic.
So when your own capital is relatively limited compared to, say, Steve Cohen, you have to get really good at leveraging narrative.
You have to expand influence through story. Perception becomes your power. That's the lesson.
Okay, this strategy isn't just confined to baseball or Wisconsin, though. He's diversified. He owns stakes in other sports, other countries even. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is another layer to his influence building. It's not just about accumulating wealth. It's about accumulating influence nodes, let's call them.
So the Norwich City stake in English football. He started with 18% in 2022. Now he's a co-controlling owner at over 40%. And he's part owner of the Milwaukee Admirals hockey team, too.
Right. Why do this? Why own medium-sized pieces of 3 different sports leagues operating under different rules?
What's the strategic benefit?
Exposure. Each league, MLB, the English Football League, the American Hockey League, has vastly different regulatory environments. Think about English football.
Financial fair play. FFP.
Exactly. Intense cost controls, rules about owner investment versus earned revenue. Navigating that gives you a masterclass in financial sustainability under constraints.
Okay, I see where you're going. That experience, understanding how FFP works, the loopholes, the challenge, that's incredibly valuable knowledge to bring back to MLB.
Invaluable. Especially when you sit on MLB's revenue sharing and labor committees, which are constantly grappling with competitive balance, salary caps, luxury taxes, all the tensions between big and small markets. He can walk into those MLB meetings with firsthand experience of how other leagues manage similar financial pressures. It makes his voice informed, credible, and potentially offers solutions others haven't considered.
So owning Norwich City isn't just about, the thrill of English football. It's partly about gathering policy intelligence.
It's like collecting different keys. Each ownership stake gives him access to a different set of regulatory discussions, different political levers, different policy ideas. He doesn't need the biggest, most expensive teams. He needs strategically placed teams in systems that offer useful insights.
It's about multiplying his points of leverage and understanding within the global sports policy landscape.
Precisely. Owning strategic, smaller doors and knowing how they connect to the main regulatory corridors.
All right, let's bring it all together. The long game. He bought the Brewers back in 2005. He's kept them competitive, 5 playoff runs since 2018. That's pretty good for Milwaukee, but he avoids those massive headline-grabbing spending sprees.
Yeah, no 9-figure free agent splashes typically. Stability seems to be the mantra.
Is that just sound financial management, or is that stability itself part of the influence strategy?
Oh, I think it's absolutely calculated. It feeds directly into everything else we've discussed. By running a stable, competitive, financially prudent organization for nearly 2 decades, he builds enormous goodwill, both locally in Milwaukee and crucially with MLB leadership and other owners.
So he's seen as a reliable partner, not a disruptive force.
Exactly. That reputation gives him latitude. It makes people more willing to listen when he advocates for structural change, like the media rights idea. It makes league leadership more likely to appoint him to those powerful committees. And it undoubtedly helped in the stadium negotiations. He could point to years of responsible ownership as justification for meeting that public investment for long-term viability. He wasn't seen as someone trying to pull a fast one.
So the stability isn't just about avoiding risk. It's about building the political capital needed for the big plays, like the $546 million deal or shaping league policy.
Right. He's not trying to beat the system by outspending everyone. He's embedding himself within the system, focusing on the rules, the regulations, the long-term positioning.
It's a different kind of dominance. Quieter, more structural.
And arguably more sustainable and perhaps even more powerful in the long run.
So, for you listening, the big takeaway from this deep dive on Mark Attanasio is pretty compelling. His playbook shows that massive influence doesn't always require massive personal capital, not comparatively anyway. It's built on understanding leverage, what people fear losing. It's built on strategic positioning within policy-making bodies. It's about controlling the community narrative. And it's about diversifying your knowledge base across different systems.
Yeah, he's quietly shaping the rules from the inside. And it highlights that the real measure of power isn't always how visible you are, but how well positioned you are. He seems focused on structural authority, which often yields far more than chasing fleeting moments of glory or headlines.
So maybe a final thought for you to consider. In your own world, your industry, your career, are you focused mainly on visibility, getting noticed right now?
Or are you thinking about building that deeper, maybe quieter, but ultimately unshakable positioning? Are you playing for the moment? Or are you trying to understand and maybe even influence the rules of the game itself?
Because at the end of the day, real power often lies in creating situations where people feel they just can't say no.
We're thinking about who else, in whatever field you follow, is playing that long, quiet game. They're often the ones making the biggest impact.